Hi y'all, welcome to my channel, welcome to a new video. Tinashe, Songs for You, album review. Let's talk about it. This is the latest album from Tinashe and her first out of the record label, RCA. It's been a pretty tumultuous year for Tinashe as she has again left RCA Records to adventure on her own, with her last album Joyride being not the most well received. She debuted in 2014 with her album Aquarius, which garnered a lot of attention, but she had this relationship with RCA Records that she saw fit to leave in 2019. Going into this thing, I was a little worried, however, because an artist usually going on their own can either mean a very good thing or very bad thing. Hell, even artists that are already on their own, like Chance the Rapper, can put out some pretty lackluster and very mediocre material. But I wasn't really all that excited going into this album because the lead singles to this album were not that exciting personally. And when I saw that this is a 15-track, 50-minute project, that got me a little worried, especially with track No Better, which is barely touching the 7-minute mark. But going into this thing and coming out of this thing, I was thoroughly surprised. And I could probably say definitively that this is her best project yet. And for Tinashe, this is definitely a good stepping stone. This is a good milestone for her, and a very good album too. There are not just R&B hits on this album that feel like cliche throwaways, but rather these are some potent, in-your-feels songs, and sometimes even sensual, sexual, titillating a little bit. And for the most part, Tinashe hit a home run with this album. I will start this album off with a couple critiques, a little bit of criticisms here and there. There are a few songs in the track listing that I thought were a little lackluster. I think for the most part, Black and G-Eazy deliver some very lackluster features, and the G-Eazy verse is very cringeworthy. The Black feature's not that good of a feature, and it's just a little blah. It also feels like it's not a Tinashe song, it feels like a Black song. The song Die a Little Bit, it was a lead single off of this album, but I wasn't all that excited going into this thing knowing that it was part of this album, and still it does not have that good of a structure, does not have the good of a sound. Miss Banks does deliver a good feature though, and I wish the song You, which is a 6-second track, would be at the end of the album. I think it would have easily tied up everything together in a nice little bow. But for the most part, what we get on this album is, like I said, R&B hits that don't feel cliche or run-of-the-mill. They feel genuine. They feel like Tinashe. And the song with MAKJ, honestly one of the only good features on this album, is very lovely. You start the album off with track Feelings, which puts you in this nice, sensual mood. But this is not the only track that has a sensual, sexual vibe to it. I can definitely dive into the lyrics on this album, but I think that would kind of ruin it for you guys. I definitely want you guys to listen to this on your own because this is definitely Tinashe's best work to date. However, I will talk about the production on this album, as it, I guess on the surface level, you can say this is kind of cliche, but once you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the production, there are some very unique styles that Tinashe puts on this album. The R&B of the 90s, I can hear that a little bit on this album, mixes well with modern R&B. A lot of the production on this album is very lovely, very sweet, velvety, like the fluttering synthesizers on the track Life's Too Short, or the soft piano chords on the 7-minute track No Better. And I said it before, but I was very worried going into this song that it was going to be very slow-paced, very monotonous, very boring. But this song keeps you invested throughout the entire runtime because it has a progression, it has movement, it has forwardness. And since this album also pulls from modern R&B, it does also pull from modern trap as well, but it doesn't sound so generic, so run-of-the-mill, so cliche. It sounds like a unique project. And yeah, there are certainly hi-hats, there are certainly snares. These sound crisp, they sound clean, and they sound so nice mixed in with this soft and sensual R&B. I also like the guitars on the last track, Remember When. There are definitely a lot of ideas on this album that I think worked very well in Tinashe's favor, because for the most part, I really don't think RCA would have let her done the things that she is doing on this album. They're somewhat eclectic, they're somewhat all over the place, but it all fuses together very nicely in a very lovely, very titillating fashion. But for the most part, it's not all that annoying. I definitely am not a big fan of modern R&B today, but this is a good example of the R&B that I look for in modern music, because I feel like a lot of R&B artists today are just trying to pull from the same influences from the 90s, from the early 2000s. And it's annoying. I think what Tinashe is doing is fusing these genres with newer sounds, newer styles, and being slightly ambitious. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. She hit a home run on this album. However, I am hoping that she can hit it out of the park with her next album. I think with an R&B album of this caliber, I think features are somewhat necessary. I don't want her next album to be bogged down with features entirely, but I think a little more, maybe 5 or 6 features, definitely some good R&B artists in the mix. But for the most part, I enjoyed a lot of what I heard on this album. There are definitely more hits on this thing. There are definitely more tracks that I can enjoy than Joyride, which is anything but, honestly. However, I am very proud of Tinashe for not only leaving RCA Records after a crappy deal, but for making herself a name. And while she isn't as big as some of the other R&B artists out there, I definitely think she has something. She had something in 2014, she has something now. So nothing really has changed so drastically that you wouldn't tell who she is from 2014 to now. Basically what I'm trying to say is Tinashe really did a good job on this album. She really did, and I love a lot of what's on here. Personally, I'd give it a B+, and I'm hoping for the best for Tinashe. Outro. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this album down below. Let me know what albums you want me to hear next. And that is it. Leave a like, comment, share, do whatever you want. Let me know how I can improve future videos down below. And remember, this is only my opinion because music is subjective.